The Grand Assembly Hall of Nexus Station could seat 3,000 delegates comfortably, which made the conspicuous emptiness around Commander Lyra Voss all the more noticeable. She sat in perfect isolation, a 20-foot radius of vacant chairs surrounding her like she was radioactive, while representatives from 47 different species filled every other available seat in the massive amphitheater. Marcus Webb paused in the entrance, squinting at his work tablet to confirm he was in the right place. The message from station engineering had been typically vague. Report to Assembly Hall Level 7, Section M for consultation regarding critical life support systems. He'd expected to find a maintenance hatch, not what appeared to be the galaxy's most important diplomatic gathering. Wrong turn somewhere, he muttered, checking his tablet again. The navigation system insisted he was exactly where he needed to be, which meant either the computers had developed a sense of humor or someone had made a very expensive mistake. He spotted the problem immediately. Several of the environmental recycling units were running at frequencies that would cause cascade failures within 48 hours. The acoustic dampeners were also misaligned, creating subtle harmonic distortions that would gradually drive everyone in the hall insane. It was the kind of systemic issue that looked fine on paper, but would turn catastrophic if ignored. Marcus scanned the crowded hall for an empty seat where he could monitor the systems while the suits finished their talking. Most sections were packed, but there was an entire area near the front that seemed to have plenty of space. He made his way down the aisle, nodding politely to various delegates who stared at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright alarm. The whispers followed him like a wake. Apparently humans in coveralls weren't typical assembly attendees. The empty section centered around a single figure who sat with military precision, her posture so perfect it could have been used to calibrate surveying equipment. She was humanoid but clearly not human, with subtle scaling along her jawline and ears that were slightly longer and more pointed than Earth normal. Her uniform was midnight black with silver accents that seemed to absorb light. Marcus checked his tablet again, confirmed the optimal monitoring position, and walked directly to the seat beside her. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, pulling out the chair. "These conferences always run long, and my back isn't what it used to be." The woman turned to look at him with eyes that were the color of molten gold, and Marcus felt a brief moment of uncertainty. Up close, she was clearly someone important, the kind of important that usually involved security details and protocols he'd never learned. But she was also just someone sitting alone in a crowded room, and Marcus had never been one to overthink simple courtesy. She began, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place. "You may sit." "Thanks." Marcus settled into the chair with a grateful sigh, immediately pulling out his diagnostic scanner to check the environmental readings. "Marcus Webb, Colonial Engineering Corps. I'm here about your life support systems, which are apparently held together with optimism and duct tape." "I am Commander Lyra Voss," she said carefully. "Nice to meet you, Commander, military." "Yes." Marcus nodded absently, focused on his scanner readings. "What branch?" "I did some work with the Navy a few years back. Decent people, terrible coffee." He was completely absorbed in his diagnostics, missing the ripple of shock that spread through the nearby delegates. Commander Lyra Voss of the Draconian Empire was legendary throughout the galaxy, a strategic genius whose military campaigns had reshaped the political landscape of three-star systems. She was feared, respected, and absolutely never approached casually by random humans in coveralls. "You are not familiar with my reputation?" Lyra asked, her tone carrying a note of genuine curiosity. "Should I be? I mostly know engineers and the occasional bartender." "Oh, and my sister, but she's a teacher, so that doesn't really count for exciting social circles." Marcus glanced up from his scanner to find Lyra staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Around them, the whispers had intensified, and he was starting to get the feeling that he'd stumbled into something more complicated than a simple seating arrangement. Did I sit in someone's reserved spot? He asked. Because I can move if this is some kind of diplomatic protocol thing. I never was good with formal etiquette. No, Lyra said quietly. The seat was not reserved. Good. Because these environmental readings are pretty concerning, and I need a good angle to monitor the atmospheric processors. You wouldn't believe how many people think life support maintenance is optional until the air starts tasting funny. But you are here to repair the station. Among other things, apparently whoever designed this place thought aesthetic appeal was more important than functional redundancy. Beautiful station, terrible engineering. But Marcus continued his scans, completely unaware that he was having a casual conversation with someone who commanded a fleet of dreadnoughts. Lyra, for her part, found herself oddly fascinated by his matter-of-fact approach to what others treated as cosmic-scale problems. You speak of engineering with great passion, she observed. It's honest work. Things break, I fix them. People don't die horrible deaths in the vacuum of space. Simple cause and effect. Marcus looked up with a grin. Plus, there's something satisfying about making order out of chaos, even if the chaos fights back. And if the chaos wins, then I drink better coffee and try again tomorrow. Life's too short to let broken machines ruin your day. As the assembly proceedings droned on about trade regulations and territorial disputes, Marcus found himself genuinely enjoying his conversation with Commander Voss. She had a sharp intellect and a dry sense of humor that emerged once she relaxed slightly. Your species approaches problems with unusual optimism, she noted. Unusual. Lady, optimism is basically humanity's superpower. We're the species that looked at the vast, hostile emptiness of space and thought, hey, let's go camping up there. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Lyra laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise her as much as it did the delegates who turned to stare in shock. Marcus smiled back, completely oblivious to the fact that he'd just witnessed something rarer than a supernova. Around them, the galaxy's most powerful beings continued their deliberations, but in their small bubble of conversation, two unlikely individuals had begun building something that neither politics nor prejudice could easily destroy. By the second day of the summit, Marcus had established what he privately called the routine. He'd arrive at the assembly hall with his toolkit and scanner, settle into the seat beside Commander Voss, and spend the morning monitoring environmental systems while she provided surprisingly insightful commentary on the various diplomatic disasters unfolding before them. Paragraph 47 of the Centaurian Trade Proposal, Lyra said quietly as another delegate droned through economic statistics, contains a clause that would effectively give them mining rights to 3 contested systems. Marcus looked up from his atmospheric readings. That sounds bad. It is catastrophic. The Rigelians will declare war before accepting those terms. And the guy reading it has no idea what he just proposed. Marcus watched the Centaurian delegate continue his presentation with obvious pride in his diplomatic acumen. Should someone tell him? In approximately 47 minutes, when the Rigelian ambassador begins screaming. Marcus returned to his scanner. Politics is way more complicated than engineering. At least when I break something, it stays broken until I fix it. In politics, breaking things is often the intended outcome. Marcus had come to appreciate Lyra's perspective on the proceedings. She had a strategic mind that could dissect complex political maneuvering with surgical precision, and she seemed genuinely amused by his complete ignorance of diplomatic subtlety. Your presence here continues to puzzle the other delegates, Lyra observed, watching a group of Arcturian representatives who kept glancing in their direction. Yeah, I've been getting some weird looks. Is there some kind of dress code I'm missing? Because this is my best toolkit and I even washed the coveralls. It is not your attire that concerns them. Then what? Lyra hesitated, her golden eyes studying his face. You are sitting beside someone they consider dangerous. Dangerous how? Are you contagious? Because my medical clearance is up to date. Not medically dangerous, politically dangerous. Marcus frowned, setting down his scanner. Commander, with all due respect, you've been nothing but helpful and pleasant company. If these people think you're dangerous, they clearly haven't spent much time actually talking to you. Perhaps, Lyra said slowly, that is because no one has ever attempted to simply talk to me. Their loss. You've got great insights into atmospheric engineering, and your predictions about the Rigelian thing were spot on. As if summoned by their conversation, the Rigelian ambassador chose that moment to leap to his feet, his translator unit screeching protests in 3 different languages. Marcus watched with fascination as the carefully orchestrated diplomatic proceedings devolved into what appeared to be a multilingual shouting match. Right on schedule, he said admiringly. You're like a political weather service. Years of military intelligence training, Lyra replied. Pattern recognition becomes instinctive. Must be handy at parties. I do not attend parties. Why not? Lyra's expression shifted, becoming something Marcus couldn't quite read. People fear me, Marcus Webb. They see my reputation, my achievements, She gestured vaguely at herself. My heritage. They do not see someone they would invite to social gatherings. Well, that's their loss too. Marcus pulled an energy bar from his toolkit and offered half to Lyra. Their gain, though, because it means I get to monopolize the most interesting conversation at this entire circus. Lyra accepted the offered food with the careful grace of someone unaccustomed to casual generosity. You truly do not know who I am. I know your commander, Lyra Voss. You've got excellent strategic instincts, and you appreciate good engineering. That's enough for me. I am responsible for the deaths of millions of sentient beings. Marcus paused in his chewing. Military. Yes. Combat. Primarily. Were you following lawful orders and defending your people? Yes, but then you were doing your job. Doesn't make you a monster, just makes you someone who's had to make hard choices. Lyra stared at him as if he'd just declared his intention to juggle pulsars. You. Simplify complex moral equations. I fix things for a living, Commander. I've learned that most complex problems have simple solutions. They're just hidden under layers of overthinking and bureaucracy. The Rigelian shouting match had escalated to include 4 other species, and Marcus could see security personnel moving discreetly toward the various hot spots. This is going to get interesting, he said, pulling out his emergency toolkit. When this place erupts into chaos, the environmental systems are going to spike from all the elevated stress hormones. I should probably prepare for emergency ventilation adjustments. You anticipate problems before they manifest, Lyra observed. Occupational hazard. In my line of work, by the time you notice a problem, it's usually already trying to kill everyone. A useful perspective for military command as well. Marcus grinned. See. We're not so different after all. You prevent wars, I prevent atmospheric catastrophes. Both require thinking 3 steps ahead and having really good backup plans. As if to prove his point, the environmental alarms chose that moment to begin chiming, indicating elevated CO2 levels from several hundred agitated delegates breathing heavily during their various arguments. Show time, Marcus said, activating his emergency protocols. Want to help me save everyone from suffocating on their own outrage? Lyra's golden eyes lit up with something that might have been excitement. I would be honored. As they worked together to stabilize the station's atmosphere, while the galaxy's greatest minds argued themselves into oxygen deprivation, Marcus realized that he'd found something far more valuable than a simple engineering consultation. He'd found a friend who understood that sometimes the most important work was the kind that nobody noticed until it went wrong. The 3rd day of the summit brought with it a crisis that made the previous diplomatic squabbles look like friendly disagreements. Marcus arrived at the assembly hall to find emergency crews surrounding the primary life support junction. their faces grim as they stared at readings that apparently defied several laws of physics. "Let me guess," he said to Chief Engineer Tors, who was holding a scanner like it had personally offended him. "The atmospheric processors are having an existential crisis. Worse, the quantum regulators are fluctuating in patterns that don't match any known failure mode. We've got maybe 6 hours before the entire environmental grid crashes." Marcus whistled low. That would definitely put a damper on the proceedings. The delegates are demanding immediate evacuation, but moving 3,000 beings of 47 different species off station in 6 hours. Tors shook his head. "It's not happening. So we fix it." Marcus was already pulling diagnostic equipment from his toolkit. "Mind if I take a look?" "Be my guest. I've been working on this for 4 hours, and I'm no closer to understanding what's wrong than when I started." Marcus connected his scanner to the primary junction, immediately frowning at the readings. The quantum flux patterns were indeed bizarre, almost like someone had tried to optimize the system using principles that didn't exist in standard engineering textbooks. "This is weird," he muttered. "It's like someone upgraded the system using technology that's more advanced than what we built it with." "That's impossible." "Yeah, well, impossible seems to be the theme of this conference." "Marcus," came a familiar voice from behind him. He turned to see Lyra approaching, moving with the fluid grace. Lyra studied the display, her golden eyes narrowing with concentration. "Yes," she said finally. "Draconian engineering uses similar principles for ship-based life support." "Draconian, but this is human technology." "Human-based technology, perhaps, but someone has modified it using principles from my people's engineering philosophy." Tors looked between them with growing alarm. "Are you saying someone sabotaged our life support with alien technology?" "Not sabotaged," Lyra said thoughtfully. "Improved, but the improvements are unstable because they're built on an incompatible technological foundation." Marcus ran another scan, this time looking for the modifications Lyra had identified. There, someone integrated quantum harmonics into a system designed for classical physics. "It's like trying to run opera through a kazoo, technically possible, but not for very long." "Can you fix it?" Tors asked. "Maybe, but I'd need someone who understands both systems." Marcus looked at Lyra hopefully. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about draconian engineering principles, would you?" "I designed half the systems currently in use by the draconian fleet." Tors blinked. "You're an engineer." "Among other things." Lyra was already examining the junction with professional interest. "Marcus, if we reroute the quantum flux through a harmonic buffer and recalibrate the base frequency to match draconian standards, we could stabilize the whole system without losing the efficiency improvements," Marcus finished, his mind racing through the possibilities. "That's brilliant." "It is also technically illegal," Lyra added with what might have been a smile. "Sharing military technology with allied species requires formal authorization." "Are you going to tell on us?" "I am going to help you save 3,000 lives. The paperwork can sort itself out later." They worked together with the kind of seamless coordination that usually took years to develop. Marcus handled the human systems while Lyra interfaced with the draconian modifications, their different approaches complementing each other perfectly. "Hand me the plasma calibrator," Lyra said, elbow-deep in quantum conduits. "The what now?" "The device with the blue housing and crystalline matrix." Marcus looked at his toolkit, then at the various alien components scattered around the junction. "I'm going to need more specific directions. To me, half this stuff looks like it was designed by artistically inclined mathematicians. The tool that resembles a decorative flower, but functions as a precision instrument." "Ah, the fancy screwdriver, got it." Ambassador Chen of the Terran Coalition chose that moment to approach their work area, his expression suggesting he just witnessed something highly improper. "Engineer Webb," he said formally, "might I speak with you privately?" Marcus looked up from the conduit he was rewiring, Kind of in the middle of preventing everyone from suffocating, Ambassador. Can it wait? This is about your association with Commander Voss. My what now? Chen glanced nervously at Lyra, who continued working but was clearly listening. Perhaps you're unaware of the commander's reputation. She's a brilliant engineer, an excellent company. What else do I need to know? She's responsible for the destruction of 3 rebel colonies, the massacre of Proxima Station, the successful defense of civilian populations against terrorist attacks. Lyra interrupted without looking up from her work. The prevention of genetic warfare that would have killed billions. The strategic elimination of threats to galactic stability. You see everything in military terms, Chen said accusingly. I see everything in terms of protecting innocent lives, Lyra replied calmly. The fact that this sometimes requires violence does not make the protection less valid. Marcus watched the exchange with growing understanding. Ambassador, with all due respect, right now she's helping me save every life on this station. That seems more relevant than whatever she did in the past. You don't understand the political implications. And you don't understand the engineering implications of arguing, while I'm trying to prevent a catastrophic system failure. Marcus's voice carried a note of authority that made Chen step back. We can discuss politics after everyone's breathing safely. Chen retreated, but Marcus could see him talking urgently into his communicator. Lyra noticed too, her golden eyes following the ambassador's movements. Your people are concerned about your association with me, she said. My people worry too much. Occupational hazard of being diplomats. They are not wrong to worry. Proximity to me tends to be hazardous. Marcus looked at her sharply. Are you trying to scare me away? I am trying to give you the opportunity to distance yourself before you become entangled in my complications. Commander, Marcus said, returning to his work, I've been entangled in complications my entire adult life. It's kind of my specialty. These complications involve interstellar politics and ancient blood feuds. And mine involve quantum mechanics and really stubborn machinery. We all have our challenges. Despite everything, Lyra smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her entire face and made Marcus suddenly understand why the other delegates seemed so nervous around her. Anyone who could inspire that kind of loyalty and fear simultaneously was definitely someone worth knowing better. The draconian battle cruiser Inexorable will materialized from hyperspace with all the subtlety of a supernova, its massive hull bristling with enough weapons to sterilize a small moon. Marcus watched it through the assembly hall's main viewport, while his diagnostic scanner beeped cheerfully about the life support systems. He and Lyra had successfully stabilized. Well, he said to Lyra, who had gone rigid beside him, I'm guessing that's not here for the complimentary continental breakfast. General Corax, she said quietly, her golden eyes fixed on the approaching ship. My former second-in-command. Former. I may have neglected to inform him that I was attending this summit for diplomatic, rather than intelligence-gathering purposes. Marcus lowered his scanner. Define neglected to inform. He believes I am here to assess human military capabilities and identify potential targets for future campaigns. And you're actually here because, Lyra said, turning to meet his eyes, I am tired of being feared. I am tired of commanding through intimidation. I am tired of being the monster that parents use to frighten their children into obedience. The raw honesty in her voice hit Marcus like a physical blow. Lyra. You showed me something I had forgotten existed, she continued. Simple kindness without agenda, friendship without fear. I cannot return to what I was before. The assembly hall's communication system crackled to life, and General Corax's voice filled the chamber with the kind of authority that made grown diplomats reconsider their career choices. Commander Voss will report to the Inexorable Will immediately for debriefing and extraction. Marcus stood up, his toolkit clattering to the floor. Extraction. Military terminology, Lyra said, rising with the fluid motion of someone accustomed to command. It means they intend to remove me from this situation by force. Over my dead body. That may be literally accurate. Around them, delegates were evacuating the assembly hall with the panicked efficiency of people who'd suddenly remembered they had urgent business elsewhere. Within minutes, the vast chamber was empty except for Marcus, Lyra, and a handful of station security personnel who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. "Commander Voss," came a new voice from the main entrance. General Korax strode into the hall with a squad of Draconian Marines, their armor gleaming like polished obsidian. He was larger than Lyra, with more pronounced scaling and eyes like burning coals. "You will explain your unauthorized contact with inferior species." Inferior. Marcus stepped forward before Lyra could respond. That's a pretty big word for someone who just interrupted a diplomatic conference with an unscheduled military intervention. Korax's attention focused on Marcus with the intensity of a targeting system. "You are the human contamination." "I'm the human engineer, actually. Marcus Webb, Colonial Engineering Corps, currently preventing your dramatic entrance from causing a station-wide life support failure." "Your existence is irrelevant." "My existence," Marcus said with a grin that was starting to feel forced, "is keeping everyone on the station breathing. I'd call that pretty relevant." "General," Lyra said, her voice carrying the cold authority Marcus had never heard from her before, "I was not aware that the Draconian Empire had adopted policies of diplomatic terrorism." "You forget yourself, Commander. You serve the Empire, not these alien weaklings." "I serve the cause of peace, as I was ordered to do when the High Command assigned me to this summit." Korax's scaled features twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Your orders were to assess human military capabilities, not to befriend them." "Plans change." "Indeed they do." Korax gestured to his Marines, who began spreading out in tactical formation. "You will return with us for disciplinary review. And if I refuse, then you will be declared a traitor to the Empire and dealt with accordingly." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Dealt with how, exactly?" "Execution," Lyra said quietly. "Public execution, to serve as an example to others who might consider betraying their species for foreign sentiment." "That seems a bit extreme for making friends." "The Draconian Empire," Korax said, "does not recognize friendship with inferior beings." "You know what?" Marcus said, his engineer's comm finally cracking. "I'm getting really tired of being called inferior by people who can't figure out basic life support maintenance." He activated his toolkit's emergency beacon, sending a priority signal to station engineering. Within seconds, Chief Tor's voice crackled through the comm system. "Webb, what's your status?" "Experiencing some workplace harassment from our diplomatic guests," Marcus replied, not taking his eyes off Korax. "Could use some backup down here." "On our way." Korax's laugh was like grinding metal. "You believe your primitive security forces can challenge Draconian Marines?" "I believe," Marcus said, "that you're outnumbered by people who really don't like bullies." The assembly hall doors burst open, and Marcus felt a surge of pride as every off-duty engineer, maintenance tech, and security officer on the station poured into the chamber. They weren't soldiers, but they were his people, and they'd answered his call without question. "Nobody threatens our boy Marcus," Chief Tors announced, wielding a plasma cutter with the casual confidence of someone who'd used it to resolve more than just technical problems. "This is madness," Korax snarled. "You would risk interstellar war for one corrupted individual." "Actually," came a new voice from the main entrance, "they're risking it for two corrupted individuals." Marcus turned to see Admiral Sarah Kim of the Terran Navy entering with her own escort of Marines. Her presence shifted the entire dynamic of the confrontation, and Marcus could see Korax reassessing the situation. "Admiral," Marcus said with relief, "always a pleasure." "Marcus, Commander Voss." Kim nodded to both of them. I've just received some very interesting intelligence about unauthorized draconian military operations in neutral space. This is a diplomatic retrieval. This is a violation of the Nexus Accords, Kim interrupted. Article 7 clearly states that no military force may operate against diplomatic personnel while they're under station protection. The commander is no longer a diplomat, Korax said. She is a traitor. According to whose authority? Because according to my records, Commander Voss was assigned to this summit by the Draconian High Command itself. Unless you're claiming authority over your own government's decisions. Marcus watched the legal maneuvering with fascination. It was like watching engineers debug a particularly stubborn program, except with more potential for people to die. There is another solution, Lyra said quietly, her voice cutting through the tension. I formally request political asylum in Terran space. The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear the hum of the environmental systems he'd spent 3 days perfecting. Asylum. Korax's voice was barely above a whisper. I renounce my commission in the Draconian military and request protection under Terran law. You would abandon your people, your heritage, your duty. I would choose, Lyra said, looking directly at Marcus, to build something instead of destroying it, to protect through creation rather than elimination. Admiral Kim smiled. Commander Voss, the Terran coalition would be honored to offer you asylum. And, she added with a glance at Marcus, the Colonial Engineering Corps could certainly use someone with your strategic expertise. You're offering me a job? Lyra asked. I'm offering you a chance to use your skills for construction instead of destruction. Interested? Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs. What do you say, Commander? Want to help me keep the galaxy's infrastructure from falling apart? Lyra's golden eyes met his, and for a moment the vast assembly hall might as well have been empty except for the two of them. Yes, she said simply. I would like that very much. Korax's roar of fury echoed through the chamber, but it was drowned out by the cheers of every human in the room. As Draconian Marines retreated in confusion, and Admiral Kim began the paperwork for political asylum, Marcus realized that his life had just taken another sharp turn into uncharted territory. So, he said to Lyra as the chaos swirled around them, ready to trade commanding armies for managing construction projects. I believe, she said, her scaled features softening into a smile, that building things with you will be far more challenging than any military campaign I've ever commanded. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the newly completed engineering bay of Harmony Station, watching Lyra coordinate the installation of hybrid human-draconian systems that would revolutionize life support technology throughout the galaxy. She wore engineering coveralls now instead of military dress, and her golden eyes sparkled with the kind of satisfaction that came from creating rather than destroying. The quantum harmonics are stabilizing beautifully, she announced, checking her readings. Efficiency is up 43% over standard human systems. Not bad for a former military commander, Marcus said, handing her a wrench with a grin. Think you'll miss the army. I miss the clarity of purpose, Lyra admitted, but I do not miss the isolation. Around them, human and draconian engineers worked side by side, sharing techniques and technologies that were transforming both species' understanding of what was possible. It was exactly the kind of cooperation Marcus had dreamed about during those long nights fixing broken systems in forgotten corners of space. Besides, Lyra continued, commanding engineers is far more challenging than commanding soldiers. Engineers ask questions. Occupational hazard. We're trained to find problems nobody